Oh, hello. Hello. There we go. Okay, good. Right. Then we were talking about Goya. Poor lovelorn Goya. Who you remember at the end of the last class, had this affair with the Duchess of Alba, who had recently been widowed and was very, very beautiful by all accounts. And he, in the portrait, right, scratched his signature into the dust, the dirt behind her, right, to her and all this. And the relationship dies pretty quickly. The second portrait on your left, which is from the textbook, is painted at the end of the affair. She's wearing a ring with his name on, with her name on it, Goya and Alba. But she's pointing down to the ground where she schmooped out the word only, solo, right? It says solo Goya, and she's brushed aside the word solo with her foot. So this is the end of it, right? The end of the affair. And Goya remained both utterly enamored with her, like a puppy dog, right? But also bitter. She dies about 5 years later, and over those coming 5 years, he's still pretty obsessed with her. Doesn't really hold on. And by the way, he's like in his 50s at this point too, so that makes it kind of creepy in a way. Anyway, the dress that she's wearing is not a mourning dress. It's the dress of a servant, a professional servant, the Mayas. We've talked about them before with the parasol, right? That early work by Goya. And here she's dressed as a Maya. She was not a Maya herself, but we've seen with other Goya portraits that, in fact, it was fairly stylish to dress up, or to dress down, I should say, to dress down. And we saw the Marquesa de Pantejos with these ribbons and flowers tied to her dress to make her into a quote-unquote shepherd figure, right? And so both of these represent, in many ways, that vogue of dressing down. Even though it doesn't look like they've dressed down all that much to you and me, that's certainly the custom here. Some suggest that this is her, the naked Maya. I don't know why this is not in your textbook. It's like one of his most famous paintings. It's really kind of fascinating. Some people think that she was the model or the inspiration for this work because it's right after they broke up. What do you think? Does that look like her? Yes, I'm hearing yes and no. Who says yes? Hands. All 6 of you. Very good. You know, most scholars think no now, but I think one of the weird things about it is that, of course, she's not posing for him anymore, right? So it's going off memory now, in drawings and whatnot. So she's not sitting for him at this point. And some people suggest that he even sort of altered her features maybe a little bit for decorum's sake. The interesting thing about this picture is it's based on a painting that the Duchess of Alba owned. She had a picture collection, and one of the pictures that she owns is a Venus painting, Venus at her toilet, Venus with a mirror, by Goya's great inspiration, Velázquez, the great 17th century court painter, right, who worked for Philip IV. And remember, we saw before that Goya's modeling himself after Velázquez. Remember the portrait of Floridablanca, where Goya's in the background, or in the foreground, presenting the portrait to him, right? And how it kind of picks up on the theme that we saw with Velázquez's work. And we know that Goya copied Velázquez's as well. I mean, did literal copies of them, both in painting and in etching. In fact, the National Gallery has quite a few Goya's Velázquez copies. And here he's taking this, basically the same idea. It's almost like we're the mirror now, isn't it? In a way, that we're looking at her from the front, and it becomes really kind of lewd and lascivious, isn't it? We're going to see a lot of really naughty pictures in this class. And in fact, today or on Friday, we'll see some things that are not so much naughty as disgusting. But there we are. So it's based on a painting that the Duchess of Alba owns. It looks a little bit like her. That could be by chance. It could be Goya. When we look at the Capriccios, we'll see that he stuck her into some images in the Capriccios, sort of getting back at her, you know, and maybe this is her as well. It's just, the anatomy is so awkward. Doesn't it look like she's got inserts. Like they're not normal looking, her breasts. They sort of sit up too high like a, porn star with saline bags. Anyway, the weird thing about this picture is that it was a commissioned picture. Not by her, but by Manuel Godoy, who was part of the king's cabinet. King Carlos IV, Godoy was his prime minister. Right? And he commissioned this from Goya because he had actually bought that Velázquez from the Duchess of Alba. Right? And he commissioned the Naked Maya to hang alongside of it. So this connection is really tight. Right? And it's kind of like what we read about with Ang. Remember with the Odalisque, how she was commissioned by Caroline Murat to go alongside another nude, right? That was this pendant that was meant to add to this, right? So this is the genesis of this picture, is that it was a commissioned piece by Manuel Godoy. Seems to have the features of the Duchess of Alba, which could connect it back to this picture, right? That could be the link that ties it all together, because it could be the reminder that this picture came from the Alba collection, right? Is that it has her features on it. Interestingly enough, Godoy then sometime later commissioned a proper clothed version of the same, right? So within a year or two, around 1802 or so, the same Prime Minister, Manuel Godoy, commissions the clothed Maya. And what we think it was commissioned to do is to be a proper cover for the naked one on a sliding rail, right? So they can move it aside and say, look, the right company, look what I've got, right? So originally it was there, right? And it sat over the top of it, right? And he could then just show people. And there are other paintings that we'll see when we get to France that were similar. There'd be a landscape on the front, and you slide it back, and there's something really raunchy underneath it, right? And that goes back to a Renaissance tradition, actually. In Venice, quite a few pictures had allegories with nudes and another picture that would slide over the top of it like a portrait or something. So it's not any great new technology in the 19th century, right? But it's a long tradition. This was during the Inquisition, and it's important to remember that intolerance was running pretty high. In fact, Goya will get in trouble for the Naked Maya later in his life, and will be called before the Inquisition for having done such a lascivious picture as that. So if we keep in mind that not everybody, loved art, and not everybody loved naked women, and that Godoy might well have needed a cover for it, especially as the Prime Minister, so that in, proper company he could have a proper picture, if you will. Okay, so there. Now, it was while he was hanging out with the Duchess of Alba that Goya began the Capriccios. We read about this just before our lengthy break. Remember that he originally called it the Dreams, the Sueños, right? And it began as 28 sketches. Each of these had a written explanation on it, right? Which are key to understanding the prince. This one he called The Author Dreaming, and as we remember, it was originally the frontispiece of the series, right? It's important to remember that the idea of having a self-portrait, if you will, or an author portrait, right? The author dreaming. The idea of having an author's portrait start off a book is a very, very ancient tradition. We can trace it all the way back to some of the very earliest handmade books that survive. You might remember from, there's the original drawing, right? But you might remember from intro classes, Byzantine Psalter, the Book of Psalms, and the very first image is David playing the Psalms, actually recording them, or not recording them, but composing them, being inspired by a figure in the background. And that's actually a better comparison than I thought, when you look at it, right? Because there's David listening to an allegorical figure of melody as he plays his little harp, and there's another figure of echo peeking out from behind the column there. And if you think about our guy, he's just falling asleep, and around him are these other, elements of inspiration of sorts. Right? So it's not a bad comparison. I doubt that Goya knew it. He's lucky on my part that it worked out that way. But the point, of course, the bigger point is that this idea of a author's portrait, beginning a series of any book, is really a very well-established tradition by Goya's time. Right? He finally printed the drawings in 1799. Right, so he's working on it, and they come out as a series in 1799, and by that time it had grown to 80 different etchings. And it's at this point that he renames it from the Dreams to the Follies, Los Caprichos. And at that point, the Sleep of Reason moves to about the halfway point, to print number 43. And he replaces it with a new frontispiece. And the new frontispiece is a more proper self-portrait, right? Francisco Goya y Lucientes, his full name, pintor, right? And his profile self-portrait. I love the look on his face. It's rather smug, somewhat condescending. This is typical of Goya's attitude toward the world around him, and particularly toward institutions of society. He was really felt like he was an outcast in many ways. He was deaf, remember? And it is kind of interesting, being deaf, that he turns his ear toward us, isn't it? I find that kind of fascinating. But that sense of separation that comes from deafness is I think, gives him this sort of critical distance from the world, and he really exercises it. That the world is full of stupid people, and he's here to tell us exactly how that all works. So the Sleep of Reason moves to number 43. This self-portrait becomes number 1. And each of them introduces a different suite of images. The first 42 are more realistic, normal disorders in society. We have the complete run at the National Gallery. Also open from 10 to 4 is the print room. And even though our class doesn't really allow us to get down to the print room, you can make an appointment there as well, and they can bring out Los Caprichos for you, the bound volume, and look through them, right? The real impressions, the real Goyas. We could try to go down on another day as well at a different time, but it would require us all finding a time to do that, and I'm happy to try. So anyway, here we see an image of sort of bad parenting. Someone broke the pitcher, and look what she's doing. She's beating the hell out of him just because he broke a pot, right? Now, okay, broke the pitcher, who knows, right? It could be a 200-year-old pitcher, and that's why she's so upset. But I think the point is that if you look at the face of the woman, she's certainly not an image of good parenting. This is not one of those Chardin pictures, right? Of the happy household where the mother's teaching the daughter how to be a good child. Or Angelica Kaufman, right, with the woman showing off her lovely children as this great paragon of domestic virtue. Instead, she's a hideous figure, right, and meant to be derided and mocked. And in fact, on the drawing that served as the basis for this one, Goya wrote, "The son is mischievous and the mother is bad-tempered. Which of these two is the worst?" Right? So even though that doesn't say that here, it leaves it a little bit more open-ended. Someone broke the picture. He did explain it to us in the drawings. This is what he means by it, right? Which of these two is the worst, mother or child? Goya is very much interested in this kind of social observation and satire, right? At one point, they're slightly funny. At the same time, they can be somewhat scary as well. Again, it's all about enlightenment, rationality, moralizing, like what we read about before the break. Others show bad education, prostitution, greed, pompousness, and so forth. Here's a donkey dressed like a noble, proudly showing us pictures of his ancestors. Right? that book full of donkeys. Look, and again, he's mocking the aristocracy, right? That's exactly what people would do. They have pictures of their ancestors on the wall. This is where I came from, and I'm great because of my lineage. And I guess what he's saying is, like, it doesn't matter what your lineage is, you're still a jackass, and that certainly is exactly the case. He's mocking the conventions of polite society, right? Many of them are directed at the Inquisition and very sharply critical of the Spanish Inquisition. Here we see a woman who's been accused of being a witch, and she is put on a stool. She has been stripped to the waist and paraded through town, and she's now being read in front of everybody her crimes by a member of the Inquisition in the background. And by giving it this title of those specks of dust, well, what does that refer to, those specks of dust? No, there's a really famous saying about specks of dust. It's in the Bible. Don't criticize the specks of dust in someone else's eye because you've got a log in yours. Right? It's all about don't criticize others for things that you do wrong yourself. I should have the exact Bible verse, but I don't have it handy. You can look it up. And so basically what Goya is saying is that, okay, even if this person is guilty, but bathed in white, are they really? The person in the background, darker, more sinister looking, is also not without sin. Right? Not without a speck of dust in their own eye that looks like a log, right? When it's in your own eye, then you should be able to see it more clearly that way. Right? The next set of prints after the Sleep of Reason, 44 on, depict fantastic subject matter and much more horrifying imagery. In this case, we see here a fine teacher. Goya explains that at this point in the series, it's turning to fantasy abandoned by reason, producing monsters, united with reason. It's the mother of the arts and the source of their marvels. And so now we see reason is gone and things have gone crazy. Supernatural images, probably also, just like the first 42 prints, these images also meant as critiques of society, of institutions in society. In this case, an old witch is teaching a young witch the craft, right? How to fly on a broom. Notice the repeat of the owl or the bat, from the Sleep of Reason in this image. Certainly it's highly sexualized, the way that they're holding the broom and riding it naked. Doesn't leave much to doubt that way. But again, we can talk about images of education and bad education, just as we saw images of bad parenting, and that this could be seen as teaching someone to blindly follow what you're doing. A lot of people suggested that Goya's images of witchcraft are in fact critiques of the church. That he saw Christians blindly following what they were telling without thinking about it at all. He had nothing against Christianity, he just had something against faith instead of reason. Unreasoned choices. And the idea of not being thoughtful and critical in what you do. And that witches allowed him to sort of attack this idea without, with a sort of a safe distance, if you will. But Goya seems to be very much interested in witchcraft, and they appear often. There's the Duchess of Alba being carried away by witches in the sky. It's one of a number of images of the Duchess of Alba carried off by three witches. In many ways, this can be seen as a much more personal image. It's almost as if, the evil in this world has taken her from me. It wasn't her own choice to leave me, but instead, the devil made her do it, if you will. As certain comedians used to say, that the devil made me do it. Goya had long been fascinated with witches. Quite a few images in painting, drawing, and print of witches and their sadness. He's not the only artist who has ever done this. But what's interesting about his images is that they are never really sympathetic toward the witches. It's not meant to be a celebration of witchcraft or the occult or any of that. These are examples of stupidity. These are examples of the blind following of instructions, and meant to be critical of people who do that, who don't question what they're taught. Right? As we hope you all do. You know, when you hear something from me and it doesn't make sense, you should say, well, he said this, but I don't agree. That's great. You know, if you don't. So here, Pan, the donkey god with the horns, right, is demanding a child sacrifice, and the witches are complying and giving him a child to sacrifice. So there's the child here, the old witch is holding it up, and Pan is going to slaughter it here in the dark with their backs in the sky in this nice little sketch. And again, this idea of, you know, hey, we need a sacrifice. Okay, let's give a sacrifice. And Christianity is really built around the idea of a human sacrifice. Right? Christ was sacrificed for our sins. The only way we're expiated from sin is through the death of a man. And Goya is offering some critique of that, some enlightenment critique of religion in general. And again, this is probably inspired by the Inquisition. As we read, you know, Goya, the whole thing about the sleep of reason was the idea that the Enlightenment had sort of gone sour, you know, by Goya's time. And in Spain, he's seeing the Inquisition. And that has got to just make him think things are really not the way they should be. You know? We have this drawing. What's going on here? Witches preparing to fly. An original drawing. This is part of the original drawings for the Caprichos. Right? And the next guy's got one of them, drawing on both sides. But what's happening here? What's going on in this image? Indeed, right? Or some instructions on something, right? And if it didn't have the title, you wouldn't know, right? It just says down below, Brujas a volar, which is about to fly or on taking flight, right? So the two figures in the back, which have human faces, right? Although not particularly attractive human faces. Looks like Munch's Scream, doesn't it? Nose turned up and whatnot. Are showing this book of instructions, we assume, to the two figures here. Now you notice we have a human figure with an animal head and an animal figure with a human head. Right? So those are our witches, and they're learning, and you see more of those faces on the quote-unquote altar, and there's a skull down below. What are those things they're holding the book with? Indeed, what you usually use for a fire, right? And also for torture, right? They're used for either putting things into the cauldron, right, and holding it there, or removing it from. And you'll notice that they're wearing those hats that we saw with the witch in public over there. But they also sort of almost look like inquisitors in a way, you know? And so in many ways, I think here this idea of education, leading people astray, blindly following what you're told, seems to sort of be at the heart of his imagery. We will wrap up Goya and kill him off on Friday. That's what my teacher used to always say. We're going to kill Goya on Friday. And we'll move from there to England and America before France. The schedule that I have up on Blackboard for what we're covering every day is so far off, right? Because I decided at the last minute to sort of change the order of things so that we keep Napoleon in our picture for a while, right? And that way what we'll do is after we get through England and America, we'll pop over to France and kind of just stay there for the rest of the class, because then we'll do Romanticism in France, Realism, and then Impressionism, right? We'll jump out for America in both of those two, okay? You hang on to it, and I will let you know if I want it back, okay? What you can just do is, if I don't have them in my grade book, I will email you and say, just tell me your score, right? And then I'll put it in my grade book. I think I did put it in, so I think we're set to go.